Hey guys, it's Miss Day and Roy, and we are ready to move on to our second digital lesson. He's so excited he just can't be still. All right, buddy. See you later. All right. So, today we are going to be talking about genres. In the last lesson we did, we talked about different types of text structures. We talked about paragraphs, we talked about stanzas, we talked about chapters, and we talked about scenes. And you guys did some great work on your ticket out, and you'll have another ticket out kind of like that today that you'll do after you finish watching this lesson. So, just like I did last time, I am going to share my screen with you and we will get started. So, kind of like, well, let me get through all this first. Not very professional, it's fine. All right, there we go. That's where I need to be. All right, so before we get started, we're going to go ahead and do another turn and talk, sort of like what we did at the beginning of our last lesson. So with whoever's in the room with you, or if you're in the room by yourself, just kind of think about it or talk about it with yourself. Um, what you already know about genre. We did talk about genre a little bit at the beginning of the year this year, and I know that was a long time ago. But I want to see what you remember about genre. So I'm going to give you about 15 seconds. Talk to whoever's in the room with you about what you know about genre. Go. All right. So now that you've had a chance to kind of get your thoughts out, here's what genre actually is. So genre is the pattern of writing that our stories follow. Or in simpler terms, it's the type of writing. We know that not all types of books are the same, right? Yeah. We have two big genres. Do you remember what those are? Well, here they are. Fiction, nonfiction. Now, fiction is a fake or made up story. It means that it did not really happen. It's made up. Somebody came up with that story out of their imagination. Nonfiction, on the other hand, there's a typo in this. Nonfiction, on the other hand, is real. And remember, the word that I like better is it's true. It shares true facts and information that are actually used to teach you something. So, excuse me, those are the two big genres. But within those two big genres, we can have some smaller genres. So, fiction versus nonfiction. Nonfiction texts provide facts about a variety of topics: sports, animals, science, history, whatever. So, we've read a few books that are nonfiction. So, the book that's pictured right here on the screen is What Would You, or What If You Had an Animal Nose? And so we did read that one this year. That is an example of nonfiction. And as we go further in this unit, we're actually going to read another book from that series. And again, it's nonfiction. It's not made up. Although the pictures are drawn, that's where it kind of gets confusing. But it has actual facts about the animal noses. The other picture here is of our social studies textbook. Now, I know we haven't actually used the social studies textbook very much, but obviously it is a textbook, real information, factual information that's in it. Fiction, on the other hand, is a story that's using made up characters, such as fantasy, realistic fiction, historical fiction, mystery, and science fiction. Now, a lot of the books that we've read this year have been fiction text. But you're probably wondering, well, Miss Day, why do you have my rotten red-headed older brother pictured as a fiction text? That's about Patricia. She's real. Yes, she is. But that book is not listing facts. It's presented as a story, if that makes sense. So in the book about the animal noses, it gives us specific facts about the animal noses. It doesn't have quotes, things that anybody has said. It just gives us straight up facts. Whereas in Patricia Polacco's books, yes, they're based on true events, but she presents them like a story. They have quotes in them. The characters are talking to each other. Therefore, that's kind of why we classify it sometimes as fiction. It's one of those kinds of books that are right on the line. Could be fiction, could be nonfiction. So now, if you're wanting to try to figure out the difference between fiction and nonfiction, here are some questions that you can kind of ask yourself. So if you're trying to figure out if a story is fiction, think about, does your story have a plot, events that are in the story, a exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and conclusion? Does it have a setting? Does it have characters? Are there things in that story that are absolutely not going to happen in real life? Does the story have a title and chapters? A lot of times, if a story has chapters, it's fiction. Now, on the other side, nonfiction. Are we going to learn actual facts and information from the book? Yes or no? Is the text about real people and events? I don't know. Does the text have text features? And Miss Nicholson talked to you guys about a lot of these text features. So does the book have text features such as graphs, maps, captions, glossary, or an index? If it does, it's nonfiction. Now, we've got some sub-genres. And under the two big fiction and nonfiction genres, we know that there are other genres that are smaller than that. So, the prefix sub actually means under. So these are genres that fall underneath the two big genres of fiction and nonfiction. Oh, you gonna help? You gonna help tell about fiction genres? Come here. Come here. Come talk about fiction genres. Here we go. Okay, so here's Mr. Joe, and he's gonna talk about fiction genres. You ready? Ready? All right, here we go.
So you see here, guys, a realistic fiction story is a story that is made up using characters that could be real. And I think I've had enough. Bye.
All right, well, like he said, a realistic fiction story is a story that has made up characters, but it's a story that could actually happen in real life. There's nothing in it that's imaginary, nothing in it that's so far-fetched that we know, oh, that's never going to happen. We also have historical fiction. And history is a fictional story that takes place during a particular time in the past. Now, again, the story is made up, the characters are made up, but the time period is real. So I know that a lot of us are familiar with the I Survived series of books. Those are all examples of historical fiction because all of the characters in those stories, they're not real. They're completely made up by the author. But the time period that they take place during is absolutely 100% real. So that makes the story historical fiction. Our next genre is mystery. And a mystery is a suspenseful story about a puzzling event that is not solved until the end of the story. So think about Scooby-Doo. You watch an episode of Scooby-Doo, something goes wrong at the beginning of the story, there's some monster that's done something, and they just can't figure out what it is. They have to keep finding clues until they figure out what is happening. And then at the very end, they reveal who the monster is, and the story's over. So a mystery book happens in the same way. Something has happened. We can't figure out how it happened or why it happened until the end of the story. Then we have a fantasy, which is a story that has elements in it that are absolutely impossible. Things that are never gonna happen. Okay? Never gonna happen. So, talking animals, fairy tales, magical powers, talking snowman, all those things, those are absolutely fantasy. They are not going to happen. And finally, we have traditional fiction. Now, these are usually stories that are passed down from one generation to another, and that includes folk tales, legends, fables, fairy tales, tall tales. So, an example of a fable might be The Tortoise and the Hare, because it's an example of a story that has all animals as the characters. A tall tale would be Pecos Bill, because it's very exaggerated, very silly. And a fairy tale might be something like Cinderella, where some sort of magic is involved. And in the case of Cinderella, we know we have the fairy godmother that's creating that magic. Now, nonfiction genres, there's not as many that we're going to focus on here. The two that we're going to be focusing on are an autobiography and a biography. And a lot of us already know what the difference between those two are. An autobiography is a story of an actual real person's life that's written by the person that it's about. That's an autobiography. Now, a biography, on the other hand, is a story about a real person's life that's written by someone else. So, for example, if I wrote a biography, or if I wrote, rewind, beep, 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 beep. If I wrote a story, a piece of text about the life of Miss Patterson, that would be a biography because I am writing it about her. Now, if she were writing a story or text about herself, it would be an autobiography because Miss Patterson is writing it about Miss Patterson. She's not writing it about someone else. She's writing it about herself. All right. So now that brings us to our ticket out. In the ticket out, I'm going to show you the question right here, but you'll also see it when you click on the link to the Google form where you'll actually answer it. But here's what it is. How can you determine if a book is fiction or nonfiction? So I want you to think about those questions, answer the ticket out, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Just a reminder, my office hours are from 10 o'clock to 11:30 every morning. If at all possible, I would like for you to get on tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. That would be Friday the 20, wait a minute. No, never mind. Okay, just scratch all that. Today is Friday. Never mind. Scratch that. All right, so anyway, confusing. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. If you need any questions, please feel free to send me a dojo message, or any weekday I will have office hours from 10 to 11:30. If you need any questions, you can click on my WebEx link. And I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Bye.